Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, worshippers of all ages, welcome to YouTube. My name is SeaRaptor, and today we're bringing you a first look at Tier 10 Premium British Heavy Cruiser. This is HMS Gibraltar. Now, Wargaming has afforded us the opportunity to go onto the public test server and have a look at these ships as they have kind of entered the game's code for the first time. Of course, we're not allowed to play them. This is the way that they used to do it many moons ago. About a year, it feels like it's been about a year or so since they changed the format. So this is maybe we're getting back to the olden days where we're able to give you guys that first look as soon as the ship was announced. But what it means is that Gibraltar has not even undergone a round of internal testing yet. So we're going to talk about the ship as she stands today, but keep in mind that she's going to go through a round of internal testing, then she's going to go through at least one round of super testing. So you're looking at least 2 or 3 months before you see this ship on live. Lots can change, so just, temper your expectations. And if you're interested in this ship and you're looking to buy it, maybe you're seeing this video later on, make sure you go educate yourself on what has changed during the testing cycle before Gibraltar was ultimately released. Okay, so let's look around and see how she compares. Now, we're going to spend probably a lot of time comparing her to Tier 10 Tech Tree British Heavy Cruiser, that's HMS Goliath, because Goliath is one of the only ships that really acts as a contemporary in terms of this caliber of gun and, of course, obviously this nation. So we're going to be looking at those kind of, comparatively as we go. So just kind of keep that in mind, okay? Starting off like we do here, survivability. 59,400 HP is a little lower than Goliath, but a little more than you might expect from a heavy cruiser at Tier 10. Most Tier 10 heavy cruisers, traditional heavy cruisers of the 203mm, 8-inch armed variety, I'm looking at you, say, Hindenburg, Zao, Des Moines, that kind of thing, all tend to come around in the 50-ish thousand HP variety. Even Venezia, with 15 barrels, still only has a smidge over 50,000 hit points. But Gibraltar here climbs closer to 60, and Goliath, for her money, has a little over 62,000. So we're a little less than that. We're about 3,000 HP less than her Tech Tree cousin, but still a fairly respectable health pool. Nice to see. Now, you're going to have to keep in mind, though, you're going to have to manage this very carefully. For one of those reasons is her torpedo protection is not very exciting. 13% is definitely on the low side. It's not amazing. I mean, Tier 10 cruisers in general don't have amazing torpedo protection. It's just not what they do well. The high end of this is like Moskva and Goliath at 28, okay? Venezia even 28. So we're about a little less than half of that here at 13. But it is noteworthy that it is something that Goliath does well. It's something that Gibraltar does not do very well, okay? Speaking of survivability, have a look at the armor. Now, if you played Goliath, you know how unreliable her armor scheme is. That ship will get slapped around by full pins all day long. Gibraltar's going to have the same problem, guys. It's basically the same armor scheme. You're going to get 25 millimeters on the bow, 30 millimeters armor for the upper casemate here, 40 mils on the deck, and 178 mils on the belt. It's worth noting that Gibraltar has an even thicker belt than this at 203 millimeters. So you're basically, what is that, a whole inch, 25 mils? 25 mils, yeah, a whole inch less armor on the belt than Goliath has, and Goliath is already pretty bloody soft. So, Gibraltar here, not really built for survivability. Now, when she's going up against, say, opposing heavy cruisers, certainly against opposing light cruisers and destroyers, that belt armor will do okay. If she's angled, she can probably ricochet some things. But from a battleship, she's going to get slapped, right? From opposing super cruisers, like heavy cruisers, battle cruisers, she's going to get slapped. And you're just going to have to deal with it, right? It is what it is. Something else worth noting, and we're going to talk about this in a little while, Gibraltar does not have the fancy British crazy super heal that Goliath gets. So you're going to have to manage her health pool very, very cautiously, okay? Maneuverability and concealment. 32 knots on speed, 840 on the turning circle, 12.6 on the rudder shift. Speed is a little on the low side. It's not worst in tier, but it's damn close, right? Most like a slow tier 10 heavy cruiser is 33 knots, and we're below that even. So like Goliath, she's not getting anywhere. At least Goliath is also 33, right? But you're even slower than that here, which feels kind of bad. 12.6 on the rudder shift, as we noted, and 840 in the turning circle. These two numbers are very comparable. In fact, all of these numbers are very comparable to Goliath. So if you've driven a Goliath, my expectation is that Gibraltar is going to handle very, very similarly, because all these numbers are within like a couple of percent of being the same. Now, one thing that's worth noting, of course, I haven't driven the ship, but Goliath has more beam. She's wider than Gibraltar. I'm sorry, Gibraltar is wider than Goliath is. So that will impact her handling characteristics. I think that's where this extra turning circle radius is coming from. But in general, the numbers are similar enough. The overall length is similar enough that I think the two ships are going to handle fairly similarly. We'll find out when the time comes. 14-4 detection on the surface. That's with her permanent camo. Totally naked. She comes in at, let's see here, 14.6 detection on the surface. Full stealth rig gets her down to 11.5 kilometers on the surface. Not amazing. Nothing to get excited about there. That's actually about a half kilometer worse than Goliath. So yeah, she's easier to spot than Goliath, she's more fragile than Goliath, and she lacks the fancy British super heel. So already, this ship is bringing some really, really interesting challenges, to say the least. So yeah, what are you getting for all of this? Well, the main battery is interesting. Let's talk about this for a bit. Gibraltar's main battery is built around 3 quadruple-barreled 234mm guns. This gives her the same barrel count as Goliath. You're still bringing 12 barrels. It's simply that the arrangement is different, right? Goliath brings 4 triple-barreled. Gibraltar brings 3 quadruple-barreled. Still 12 barrels. But Gibraltar reloads 14.5 seconds versus Goliath's 19.5. That's significant. That's literally 25% faster. That's a huge reload buff. The turrets do turn a little slower because they are 4 barrels instead of 3. Both of these ships have basically the same range on the main battery, the same dispersion, these are the same shells, they'll have the same velocity, they'll have the same performance characteristics as Goliath's AP. What's different? Well, for starters, as you can see, Gibraltar doesn't get HE shells. She is stuck with this 9.1-inch AP. That's what she gets. She has to make it work. But the other thing that she gets is improved ricochet angles. Now, to most players, that don't mean a whole lot. But for veterans of World of Warships, players who've got a few thousand battles under their belt and understand the importance of what that means, this is a significant advantage, right? One of the things the American heavy cruisers get on their fancy super heavy AP shells is typically they get improved ricochet angles. Gibraltar now brings this as well, right? Goliath's AP shells will start performing ricochet checks when they hit a target that is angled at 45 degrees or better to the incoming round. Gibraltar moves that number from 45 all the way to 60 degrees. It means that your AP shells are more likely to bite in and become full penetrations or possibly citadels at almost anything you throw them at until they get extremely angled to you, right? So if you catch, how if you catch a cruiser, in the middle of the turn or broadside and he doesn't know you're there, you can throw an AP salvo, but sometimes he can turn enough before your shells arrive that the hit just doesn't quite do what you wish it did. Well, with Gibraltar, it's a lot harder to do that because the shells won't perform their ricochet check if that ship is not extremely angled when those shells arrive. So that's really the big difference here, right? You're putting more AP shells downrange. You're putting the same number down. Okay, sorry. You're putting the same number of shells downrange as Goliath is. You're putting them downrange 25% faster, and they are less likely to bounce. That's what it boils down to. They do not have anything. The fuse timer is the same. For those of you that understand fuse timer mechanics, you know that one of the reasons the British light cruiser AP shells are so nasty is because they fuse very quickly. This means that those AP shells would normally, say, overpen a destroyer, but instead they fuse so fast that they become full pins on a destroyer. Gibraltar does not have this. These are the same fuse timers that Goliath has. So it's literally the same shell. The only difference is that improved ricochet check. So she'll make a superb cruiser hunter, and she has the possibility of doing really nasty things to broadside battleships. The trick is the hull is super fragile, and you don't have a lot of range, so you got to really think about this. Plus, I don't know if you guys have played Goliath with these shells. These shells are slow. You got to put a lot of lead on these shells, right? So, using this advantage to your advantage could be an extreme challenge. Let's look at her AA defenses. Let's compare her to Goliath again in this category here. So we're looking at 5.8 range, not abnormal there. 6 flak puffs, and going out to 5.8 kilometers. This is the same, right? Basically, Goliath also mounts these little 113mm guns. Minotaur also mounts these things. These things are nasty. They're really, really good for long-range ore. For long-range ores, they throw a lot of puffs up, and they're really, really mean. The mid-range aura is where the two ships start to diverge a little bit. Goliath has more punch in her mid-range aura. Both ships packing on the 40mm Bofors, either in the 6-barreled configuration or the this kind of double-barreled stag configuration. Either way, she packs a lot of these. All the mid-range aura is there. You see there 333 DPS. That's a little less. It's about 10 to, let's call it 12% less than Goliath's mid-range aura. And then you see there 126 DPS in the inner ring. That is about 100 DPS less than Goliath. So overall, she does have less AA DPS than Goliath, but that does not mean she's toothless. This is actually not a terrible AA suite for a tier 10 cruiser, especially if she takes defensive fire. Speaking of, let's go look at consumables. Can she take defensive fire? Come on. Here we go. There we go. All right, so she comes with damage control party because she's a ship in World of Warships. As we noted, this is the standard tier 10 cruiser heal. This is not the fancy British cruiser heal, so you got to be real gentle with this ship, okay? Plymouth has this same problem as well. Tier 10 premium British light cruiser HMS Plymouth also has to make do with a standard heal, so you got to be real gentle with these ships. You see here, she's stuck to Hydro. She does not get a choice between Hydro and defensive fire the way that Goliath does. So the A defense is not bad, but she cannot equip defensive fire. That does feel a little bad. She will probably be kind of some carrier food against a good carrier pilot. And then she does get smoke. Now this is interesting, and if I'm honest, a little questionable. For starters, this is only this smoke lasts just barely 90 seconds, okay? This is like tier 10 German destroyer smoke or something. It's very, very short-lived. The other problem you're going to have is when she's firing her main battery in smoke, she still has a detection bloom of 9.5 kilometers. Yikes. Yikes. If you're not playing this ship in a div or playing this ship with like people out in front of you to screen you from enemy destroyers, you may be smoked, but chances are somebody's going to be able to sneak up and get in that side of that bubble and still see you. Very much like Kutuzov, right? Kutuzov's bubble these days is like 8.8 or something silly when she fires in smoke. Gibraltar's is past that, you know. Anchorage, I think, is probably another ship that you could compare this to, right? Anchorage, Tier 8 American Premium Heavy Cruiser USS Anchorage gets a smoke, but she has, 12 8-inch barrels. Her smoke bloom is like 8.7 or 8.8 or something. It makes the ship very challenging to play in certain conditions. If you don't have somebody to help keep the enemy destroyers away from you, spotting you in your smoke, Gibraltar is going to have the same problem. So you have the smoke, but you're going to have to be very, very deliberate and cautious about when you use it and where you use it, because this ship cannot take, this ship can't even take hits Goliath can take, and Goliath already can't take a lot of hits. So that feels really bad. Anyway, guys, there we go. That's our first quick look at Tier 10 Premium British Cruiser HMS Gibraltar. Hope you enjoyed that. Wash your hands. Be safe. I'll catch you next time.